The halls of Fox Sports 1 had never seemed so lively. Producers were rushing back and forth, checking and rechecking equipment. Makeup artists were making final adjustments to the presenters. Skip Bayless, seated in his chair, reviewed his meticulously organized notes for the 10th time, underlining questions with his characteristic red marker. "This will be one of the most important interviews on the show," commented one of the producers while adjusting Skip's lapel microphone. "We're lucky." He agreed to it. Skip just nodded, without taking his eyes off his notes. This wasn't just any guest. Steph Curry rarely granted interviews in that format, preferring the safety of post-game press conferences or more controlled conversations with specific outlets. Backstage, Curry's team, composed of press officers and an agent, discussed the final details with the show's producers. "Remember, no surprises," the agent insisted. "We're here in good faith." "It will be an honest conversation, as always," replied the executive producer, knowing full well that Skip would not give up his most incisive questions. It was what made the show what it was, a verbal battleground where no topic was too sacred to be questioned. The studio, known for its modern look, was even more imposing that night. Extra lights had been strategically positioned. The cameras, normally 3, were now 5 to capture every angle, every reaction, every micro-expression. The audience, carefully selected, was divided between Warriors fans, Curry critics, and regular viewers of the show. In the dressing room, Steph Curry sat in front of the mirror, but barely looked at his reflection. Instead, he kept his eyes closed, as he did before important games. A deep, controlled breath, a silent prayer. His media trainer had tried to anticipate every possible question, every provocation Skip could throw. But Curry dismissed the prepared scripts. "I'm just going to be myself," he said, opening his eyes and standing up. As always, the clock read exactly 8:50 p.m., 10 minutes until the live broadcast began. The FS1 studio glowed under the powerful lights. The monitors displayed the program's logos and graphics with Steph Curry's career statistics. The audience was anxious, and the atmosphere carried an almost palpable tension. Social media was already buzzing with anticipation for the encounter between the discreet basketball star and one of America's most controversial sports commentators. Skip Bayless, adjusting his impeccably tailored suit, announced to the cameras that it would be a historic night, promising a genuine confrontation. No scripts, no prearranged questions, just the raw truth the viewers deserved. "Tonight, we will have no filters," Skip proclaimed with his usual dramatic tone. "We're going to find out who Steph Curry really is, beyond the three-point shots and smiles for the cameras." The audience reacted with a mixture of applause and anxious murmurs. Some Curry fans seemed worried, knowing Skip's reputation for creating controversial moments. After the introduction and a brief commercial break, the cameras returned to focus on the main stage. The studio's side doors opened, and Steph Curry entered with his characteristic manner. Discreet, yet striking. He wore a simple gray t-shirt, well-cut dark pants, and sneakers from his own line. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that screamed superstar. Just Steph Curry, being Steph Curry. The audience stood up in a wave of applause. Curry smiled, politely nodded to all sides, and greeted Skip with a firm handshake, but without exaggeration. Their eyes met for a brief moment, enough for both to understand that this would not be a night of superficial conversation. "Welcome to our show, Steph," said Skip, pointing to the chair opposite his. "I can say that many doubted you would accept our invitation." Curry settled into a posture that was simultaneously upright and relaxed, like someone who is used to dealing with pressure, but never lets it rattle him. "Thank you for the invitation, Skip," he replied with his calm and articulate voice. "I've always enjoyed a good challenge." The audience reacted with nervous laughter. The duel had begun. Skip started with his usual warm-up, seemingly light questions, but strategically positioned to build the ground for the harder hits that would come later. "So, Steph? Or do you prefer Steph? Curry? Chef Curry?" Skip began with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What should I call the man who transformed modern basketball?" "Steph is great," Curry replied with a slight smile. "But you can call me whatever you prefer, Skip. I'm used to all the nicknames at this point." Skip nodded, leafing through his notes with a studied theatricality. "Let's go back a bit to contextualize our conversation. Do you remember your early years in the league? Those warriors before the dynasty? Some even called them the ankle injury years, right?" The audience reacted with some laughter. It was well known that Curry faced serious injury problems early in his career, something that nearly jeopardized his future in the NBA. "I clearly remember," Curry responded without losing his composure. "Those were formative years. Every obstacle taught me something valuable." "It's interesting that you call obstacles what many considered the premature end of a promising career," Skip goaded. "Your initial contract with the Warriors was considered a bargain because of those injuries. Imagine if you had negotiated after becoming, well, Steph Curry." Curry smiled, this time more openly. "Everything happened as it should have, Skip. That contract allowed the team to build a competitive roster around me. I can't imagine how it would have been different, and honestly, I don't waste time thinking about it." Skip seemed slightly frustrated with the balanced response, but continued. "Speaking of building around, you were lucky to play with Klay, Thompson, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, and of course, Kevin Durant. Many stars dream of a cast like that." "Luck?" Curry repeated, maintaining a cordial but firm tone. "Maybe, but it was also hard work, vision from management, and above all, everyone's willingness to sacrifice something for the collective good. It's not just about gathering talent, as many teams have discovered the hard way." The audience reacted with restrained applause. Skip realized he would need to change his strategy. The warm-up wasn't yielding the reactions he expected. Skip leaned forward, leafed through his notes with more determination, took a deep breath, and fired off, staring fixedly at Curry. "Steph, some say you revolutionized basketball, but also that you destroyed the game with this obsession with three-point shooting. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Larry Bird, they all had the shot, but they didn't live off it. Don't you feel you've stained traditional basketball? That you've encouraged a generation to ignore fundamentals for spectacular shots?" The silence in the studio was immediate. The audience, accustomed to polite and evasive responses from athletes, collectively held its breath. The lead cameraman zoomed in on Curry's face, capturing the exact moment his eyes narrowed slightly, the only visible indication that the question had touched a sensitive point. Curry, serene as always, crossed his hands over his knee and, with a calm and reflective tone, replied, "I never tried to change what basketball is, Skip. I just played the game as I see it, as I feel it. My dad always taught me all the fundamentals: dribbling, passing, defense, finishing. The shot was just what set me apart. Respecting what came before me is as important as inspiring what comes after." Skip, dissatisfied with the measured response, insisted, "But don't you think you've encouraged a generation of players to force impossible shots? We see 10-year-olds shooting from the logo instead of learning to pass properly or defend." Curry smiled, this time with more firmness in his eyes, and countered, What I hope to have encouraged is freedom, Skip. The freedom to create, to dream, to work hard, and find your own space in the game. No one makes it to the NBA just by shooting from far away. That's a very simplistic view. The players who really draw inspiration from me understand that I've spent thousands of hours perfecting every aspect of my game. He paused, as if carefully considering his next words. And you know what bothers me most about that narrative? It disregards the work. People see the result, the shot falling from far away, but they don't see the mornings, the nights, the weekends on the empty court. No one destroys basketball by expanding its possibilities. The studio became even quieter. Even Skip seemed to be quickly searching for new cards. A producer on the side of the studio made animated signs, indicating that social media was exploding with Curry's response. Skip tried another angle. Speaking of influence, you've inspired many, no doubt, but you've also created a generation of imitators who will never have your talent. Isn't that a heavy responsibility? Curry's eyes sparkled with something between amusement and determination. Each generation has its idols and references, Skip. When I was growing up, I tried to imitate Allen Iverson and Reggie Miller. Not everyone who tried to be like Michael Jordan became a professional, but does that diminish his legacy? True influence is not about being copied, but about showing that it's possible to break molds, to overcome limitations. The audience reacted with more enthusiastic applause this time. A woman in the front row shouted, "That's right, Steph!" eliciting laughter from Curry himself. The interview progressed, and Skip decided to change tactics, touching on a point rarely addressed with Curry. You're one of the most respected athletes in the U.S., but you rarely take a stand on social issues like other players, such as LeBron James. While he speaks openly about politics, racism, social issues, you keep a more discreet profile. Do you avoid these subjects to protect your image? To not alienate fans? The audience tensed up again. Some producers exchanged nervous glances backstage. This was the kind of question that could easily turn an interview into a viral moment, for better or worse. Curry took a deep breath. His eyes, normally smiling, took on a rare seriousness. He responded slowly, "Talking is important, Skip. Acting is even more so. I prefer to be remembered for the actions I take quietly, supporting communities, creating schools, investing in youth from underprivileged areas, funding mental health programs, rather than public speeches that end up on the news and disappear the next day." Skip tried to interrupt, but Curry stared at him with a serenity that commanded respect, and completed. "In my family, we learned that respect is built far from the IB cameras. My dad, my mom, they taught me that character isn't what you proclaim to be, but what you do when no one is looking. And I deeply respect players like LeBron who have chosen to use their platform in a different way. There are many paths to making a difference." The studio was immersed in respectful silence. Even Skip seemed momentarily disarmed by the honesty in the response. But, being Skip Bayless, he quickly regained his provocative stance. "Steph, you're a multimillionaire, one of the highest-paid athletes in the history of sports. Have you ever thought that maybe you should make your philanthropy more visible? Show what you do with your money? Inspire others to follow your example?" Curry, without losing the composure that characterized him both on and off the court. "I believe that true generosity doesn't need an audience or spotlights, Skip. I do support projects, yes. I build opportunities. I work with organizations that promote education, health, equality. But I don't do it to gain headlines or applause." He paused, as if searching for the exact words. When we help someone, it's not to be celebrated or recognized. It's because it's the right thing to do. It's to create a better, fairer, more compassionate world. And for me, seeing the real impact of those actions on people's lives will always be worth more than any trophy, award, or headline. A young woman in the audience discreetly wiped away a tear. Beside her, an older man nodded in silent approval. The tension reached its peak when Skip, visibly frustrated at not being able to shake Curry's composure, threw out one last provocation, the card he'd saved for the decisive moment. Many say, and I include myself in this group, that you only shined because you played alongside superstars like Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, and Draymond Green. Michael Jordan proved he could carry a team. Kobe did too. LeBron took weak teams to the finals. You've never proven you can win alone. Doesn't that bother you? Don't you feel your legacy has that asterisk? The audience reacted with a mix of sighs and murmurs. Some Curry fans seemed outraged. The executive producer smiled backstage. It was exactly the kind of moment they sought for the show. Curry smiled for the first time in a broader and more genuine way. It was a smile that contained no anger or frustration, but something close to compassion. Like someone smiling at a child who still has much to learn. He responded with a calmness that cut like a sharp blade. Basketball is a team sport, Skip. It always has been and always will be. No one wins alone, not even the greatest. Jordan had Pippen and Rodman. Kobe had Shaq, then Gasol. Bird's Celtics had Parrish and McHale. He took a calculated pause, his eyes fixed on Skip's. If someone thinks I need to prove something beyond what I've already built over these years, 4 championships, 2 MVPs, records, well, I'll let them judge. I know who I am, and I know what I've accomplished. And above all, I know that each victory was the result of collective effort, shared sacrifice, mutual trust. Skip Bayless was visibly disconcerted. He leafed through his notes, not knowing how to continue. This was not the Curry he expected to find. A star sensitive to provocations, defensive about his legacy. Instead, he found a man at peace with himself, secure in his place in history, unshakable in his values. The audience remained in respectful silence, a heavy silence, of those who understand that they are witnessing something deeper than a simple interview, a true lesson on maturity, respect, and authenticity. In the final minutes of the show, Skip tried to regain control, asking more technical questions about the next season, about opponents, about the future of the Warriors. Curry answered each one with the same combination of honesty and diplomacy that characterized the entire interview. When the live lights went off, the audience stood up in a spontaneous ovation. It wasn't just for Curry. It was for the moment they had witnessed, for the demonstration of how one can face provocations with grace and dignity. Skip extended his hand to Curry, who shook it firmly. "It was an interesting conversation," said Skip, with a genuine respect he rarely showed. "It was," Curry replied simply. "I hope we have others." As he left the studio, Curry was approached by a young production assistant. "Mr. Curry," said the boy nervously, "I just wanted to say that you taught me something today that has nothing to do with basketball." Curry smiled, genuinely curious. "And what was that?" "That the greatest strength lies in calmness," replied the young man. "Thank you for that." Curry didn't raise his voice at any point that night. He didn't resort to inflammatory speeches. He didn't try to sell himself or create viral moments. He was just who he always was, and therein lay his unshakable strength. That night, in a studio where everyone speaks loudly to be Heard, it was the man who spoke softly, who left the deepest mark. And while social media exploded with clips and comments about the interview, Steph Curry was already at home, having dinner with his family, away from the spotlight, exactly as he preferred to be. Weeks later, when asked about the interview at a press conference, Curry just smiled and said, "It was just a conversation, like any other." But everyone knew it hadn't been any other. It had been a masterclass in authenticity, in staying true to one's own values, even under the most intense spotlights and the sharpest provocations. And perhaps, in the end, that's the greatest victory Steph Curry has ever achieved. Not just changing the game of basketball, but showing how one can win in life without losing the essence of what truly makes us human.